You probably don't think of yourself as smart in the traditional sense. You just notice things, patterns, people's tone, small shifts in behavior that others seem to miss completely, and most of the time you don't even question it. It just feels normal. But what a lot of people don't realize is, this kind of awareness usually doesn't come from nowhere. It's often built in environments where you had to pay attention, where missing small details had consequences, where understanding people wasn't optional, it was survival. And over time, that does something to your brain. It changes how you process the world. Sign 1. You read people faster than you'd like to. You can tell when someone's mood shifts even slightly. You pick up on tension in a room before anything is said out loud, and it's not something you consciously try to do. It just happens. Psychologists sometimes connect this to what's called hypervigilance. It develops when your brain learns that staying alert to emotional cues keeps you safe. So instead of relaxing around people, your attention stays active. You're scanning tone, body language, pauses in conversation. The interesting part is, this can look like social intelligence, and in many ways it is. But underneath that skill, there's usually a history of needing to predict how someone might react before they actually do. Sign 2. You think before you speak. A lot. Not because you're unsure of yourself, but because you're calculating impact. You've learned that words can escalate situations or shift someone's mood instantly, so instead of speaking impulsively, you pause. You adjust. You choose the version of your thoughts that will land the safest. Over time, this builds a kind of cognitive control. You become more precise with language, more aware of consequences. Some psychologists link this to adaptive behavior patterns, where you learn to regulate yourself early, often in response to unpredictable environments. It's not just being careful, it's pattern recognition applied to communication. Sign 3. You're unusually independent, but not in an obvious way. You don't always ask for help, not because you think you're better than others, but because you're used to figuring things out alone. At some point, relying on others probably didn't feel stable. So your brain adapted. It stopped expecting support and started building internal systems instead. Problem solving, self-reflection, planning ahead. And while this can make you highly capable, it also means you carry more mental load than people realize. You're not just living your life. You're managing it constantly. Sign 4. You notice inconsistencies quickly. When someone says one thing but does another, it stands out immediately. When a story doesn't quite add up, you feel it. You might not always call it out, but you register it. This is closely tied to pattern detection. Your brain is comparing present behavior with past observations in real time. And when something doesn't match, it creates a subtle tension. That tension is information. A lot of people ignore it. You don't, and over time, this builds a kind of quiet intelligence, not based on facts or memorization, but on accuracy, on seeing things as they actually are. Sign 5. You're comfortable with complexity. You don't need everything to be black and white. In fact, you probably get skeptical when things seem too simple, because your experience taught you that people are layered. Situations have multiple sides, and easy answers are often incomplete. Psychologists sometimes refer to this as cognitive complexity, the ability to hold multiple perspectives at once. It usually develops when you've had to make sense of situations that didn't have clear explanations. So, instead of jumping to conclusions, you analyze, you consider context, you sit with uncertainty longer than most people can tolerate, and that in itself is a form of intelligence. Sign 6. You're emotionally aware, but not always expressive. You understand what you're feeling. You can even understand what others are feeling, but that doesn't mean you always show it, because somewhere along the way you learned that expressing emotions freely wasn't always safe or effective. So you developed internal awareness instead of external expression. This creates a kind of emotional intelligence that's quiet. You process deeply but privately, and while that can make you seem calm or composed, there's usually a lot happening beneath the surface. Sign 7. You learn from experiences faster than most people, especially difficult ones. You don't just go through things, you analyze them. What happened, why it happened, what patterns led to it, and how to avoid it next time. This is sometimes called experiential learning, but in your case, it's more refined. Because you're not just reacting, you're extracting meaning, and once you see the pattern, it sticks. Which is why you rarely make the exact same mistake twice, not because you're perfect, but because your brain is wired to connect cause and effect more quickly. And here's the part that often gets overlooked. None of these traits come from comfort. They come from adaptation, from being in situations where your mind had to become sharper just to keep things stable. So yes, in many ways, it made you smart. But not in a loud, obvious way, more like precise, aware, hard to fool, the kind of intelligence that doesn't need to prove itself. It just understands things a little earlier than everyone else does,